Good Tuesday evening, everybody. Welcome to my NFL offseason plan video for all 32 teams. I am Mason Zapesky, your host, and we are going to tonight, I was just adjusting the lighting there, sorry about that. We are going to tonight discuss the NFL teams, the state of all 32 teams right now, where they stand, and how they can get better this offseason. The Super Bowl ended just 16 short days ago with the Kansas City Chiefs defeating the San Francisco 49ers by a final score of 25-22 in overtime. The NFL Scouting Combine starts in just 2 short days, and this is where the top prospects for the NFL Draft work out. The deadline for franchise tags is a week from today, March, I want to say the 6th or 5th. 5th, yeah. Free agency negotiations start March 11th, and free agency in the new league year begin March the 13th. The NFL Draft is April the 25th through the 27th in Detroit, Michigan, and the NFL schedule release will take place most likely, but not guaranteed, the week of May the 6th, likely May the 9th if it works out like past years. And training camp for teams will start at the end of July. Why am I going over all these dates? Because the offseason is a long period of time. There won't be any actual football games for about 5.5 months if you count preseason. If you count regular season, it's more like 6.5. These plans, you cannot put an offseason plan together in 2 hours. It takes a lot of collaboration and it takes a lot of time. First, and this is how I would do it if I were in charge. First, you have to evaluate your team throughout the entire season. Go back, look at everything, evaluate your salary cap situation, look to see who you think you should bring back, and look to see who it's probably in their best interest that you part ways with or let them go. Second, you have to you have to pick the free agents based off what you think is needed and who you think best fits your system with how much salary cap space you have, depending on how they play that year and how they fit. That's part 2. Third, with your remaining needs and draft interests, you have to have a solid draft. That's part 3. To put together a productive NFL offseason plan takes weeks. And they're finally starting to start with combine interviews, combine workouts, combine everything. Next week with the franchise tag. 2 weeks from tomorrow with free agency in the new league year. And then in about 7 short weeks, the 2024 NFL Draft in Detroit. So there's a lot teams need to do in that 7-week span. However, the plans are put in place, and this is very basic what I have. However, I think it's a good indicator for these teams to see what they need and see how they can improve. So without further ado, here we go. Like I said, this will work. I will go over each team by division and discuss the state of the team right now, where they're at, how they did, and what I would do in the offseason and team needs. I'm not going to mention specific players here. I'll do that in a free agency predictions video, which will probably be out at the end of next week, mid to late next week. And in terms of the draft, I will do a mock draft video the night before the NFL draft, and it'll be my final one. So, this is basic, and this can all change. But these are just for the teams. Starting with the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills. They had a good year. They started out slow until they fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. Then they picked up. I think they only lost 1 game after that, and it was against the Eagles. Last game before their collapse. So, yeah, kind of interesting. And now they're going to go into the season with a lot of the same system, following a playoff loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. So the state of this franchise is pretty good. We're going to do it I'm going to divide this into levels. I'll just say the state of the franchise is really poor, not good, average, good, very good, and exceptional. The state of the Buffalo Bills right now is very good. And it can move to exceptional. And I'll do this. I will go move you to the next tier if they do this. They need to develop a system that maximizes Josh Allen while limiting turnovers. You have to rebuild your defense through cheap contracts and the draft. The team needs for the Bills are running back, wide receiver, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. Next up, we got the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins always have a strong regular season. They had a very strong one this year. They had a good offense. However, that did not work out in the playoffs, and they still have not won a playoff game in a very long time. Longest actually playoff drought now since Detroit won this year. The state of the Dolphins franchise right now is good. It can move to very good by finding an everyday tight end, improving the defense for free agency, because this team is very close to competing. The current team needs for the Dolphins: wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. New England Patriots. The Patriots had a horrible year in 2023. They went 4-13, and this season led to the team parting ways with longtime head coach Bill Belichick. The state of the team right now, following this season, is very poor. I think that's the lowest level I said. I think I said very poor. Or awful, I think actually was. That's the lowest. Awful. The state of this team is awful. The offense is awful. And the defense needs a little more work. The team can move up. Oh, it was very poor, actually. I'm sorry. Very poor was the last, or awful, yeah. It can move up to very poor by getting the quarterback pick right, rebuilding the offense through the draft, and adding one or two pieces via free agency. Their current team needs are quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, cornerback, and safety. Once they get the offense figured out, they can be pretty good. That's just my opinion. So, I accidentally forgot the tiers. I'm sorry. So, we're going to now do it awful, very poor, not good, average, good, very good, exceptionally good, and amazing. There's your new tiers. I'm sorry about that. Now on to the New York Jets. The Jets had a rough season this past year because of how Aaron Rodgers got hurt. However, the team still managed to finish 7-10. However, the owner of the team, Woody Johnson, also recently stated that this is playoffs or bust for general manager Joe Douglas and head coach Robert Saleh. If they miss the playoffs this year, both men are likely to be fired. The state of the Jets right now, in my opinion, is average. They can move up to good by getting a better backup quarterback, investing in the offense, because the defense is solid. The current team needs for the Jets: quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, and safety. On to the AFC North now. The Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens had the best record in the AFC and entire NFL this year. However, they could not manage to get to the Super Bowl, falling 17-10 to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. The Ravens are a good franchise and have a lot of hope, young talent, and optimism going into 2024. The current state of the Ravens franchise is exceptionally good. They can move up into the amazing status by continuing to improve on offense and keeping that defense together. With drafting always being strong, they should possibly consider making a big free agent signing on offense. I think this would be a good fit for Mike Evans, and I think he would do very well in Baltimore. The current team needs a running back, wide receiver, and cornerback. On to the Cincinnati Bengals. It was a rough year for the Bengals. Both Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase were injured throughout the season. This hurt the Bengals big time. They finished 9-8, last place in the division, and missed the playoffs for the first time since 2020. The Bengals will look to get back to Super Bowl contender status following a Super Bowl appearance in 2021 and an AFC Championship one in 2022. The Bengals need to bounce back sooner rather than later, as the team has to also extend Chase. Currently, the Bengals are in the exceptionally good status because of Burrow and Chase and their amazing offense. The team can move back into the amazing status by finding help to protect Joe Burrow on the offensive line and improving their defense. Their current team needs are tight end, offensive line, and defensive line. Sorry. Next up, we got the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns had a miracle season because of their amazing defense and comeback player Joe Flacco of the year's amazing comeback efforts. I don't think he should have got the award, but congratulations to him anyway. The Browns are a very talented team. However, there's no guarantee Deshaun Watson's going to produce at the quarterback position. You need a backup quarterback, and I'll get into that in a minute. So, I think this was a miracle run, kind of, as shown in the playoffs by their 31-point loss. However, this is still a good team with an amazing defense. The current state of the Browns, I believe, is good. It can move up to very good if the team adds another quality receiver and improves the offensive line. Possibly add another backup quarterback if Joe Flacco does not return. The current team needs of the Cleveland Browns: running back, wide receiver, tight end, defensive line, and linebacker. Now on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers struggled started out strong, got to a 7-4 start. However, they lost 3 games in December to put them at 7-7 and pretty much out of the playoff picture, until backup quarterback Mason Rudolph came in and saved the day, got the team to the playoffs at 10-7, where unfortunately they fell to the Buffalo Bills. The Pittsburgh Steelers' current status is good. It can move up to very good if the team decides to figure out the quarterback situation, develops receivers better, adds another offensive lineman or two, and figures out the secondary. The current team needs for the Steelers are quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, cornerback, safety, and punter. Next up, on to the AFC South, where we start with the Houston Texans. The Texans had a surprise year, coming off of 3 consecutive awful, ugly, horrid down years. Head coach DeMeco Ryans, offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, and quarterback C.J. Stroud propelled the Texans back to the postseason. Their system was welcome in Houston, embraced, and helped. The Texans now will look to take the next step. The current status of the Texans is very good. The team status can move up to exceptionally good if they continue to build, have another solid draft, and then this team becomes Super Bowl contenders, which technically is the amazing category, but they could get there sooner rather than later, I think. The team needs right now for them, I believe. Running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive and defensive lines. Next, we got the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts were surprisingly in the playoff chase after another down year, despite quarterback Anthony Richardson getting hurt. Head coach Shane Steichen's amazing play calling and game management helped put them back in the picture. The question is now, can the Colts take that next step, and is Richardson going to be the franchise quarterback that they had hoped for? He looked good early on, but he's very vulnerable to injury, and he's just coming off one. So we'll see. The current status of the Colts is average. The Colts can move up into the good category if they add another running back and a tight end. You also have to improve the defense. They probably need 2 tight ends, a blocking tight end and a receiving one as well. Depends on what they do with Mallory Cox. We'll see. The current Colts team needs are as follows: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defensive line, cornerback, and safety. The reason quarterback is on there is because there's no guarantee Gardner Minshew will re-sign. If you have a free agent in that position, I put it as a need until the player re-signs. And if the player re-signs, I will highlight it and that will get checked off. So yeah. And we'll talk about team needs and all that once the draft is over and who's the best situation right now in terms of that. So yeah. Next up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars were a team hyped up by many coming into this year, including myself. The Jaguars started this year with an 8-3 record. However, they finished 9-8, going 1-5 in their last 6 games, only beating Carolina. The Jaguars fired defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell and hired Ryan Nielsen for the same role, which I think is awesome. They did a great job there. It'll be interesting to see what else happens with the Jags this offseason and in the draft. The current status of the Jaguars is good. The team can move up into the very good category by adding one more wide receiver, improving this offensive line, and the entire defense. Their team needs are as follows: wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. The Tennessee Titans. Next up, we have the Tennessee Titans. The Titans had a rough year. They went 6-11. They have the 7th pick in the draft. They have a new GM that came in. This past year was his first year in Rand Carthorne, or however you pronounce that. I'm sorry. Carthorne drafted Peter Skoronski to be the franchise star at the line, and Will Levis to become the next franchise quarterback, who I think is going to be very good. They hired Brian Callahan to become their next head coach in hopes of helping Levis to succeed. And I hope and believe he will do just that. However, the Titans right now, because of the state of the AFC South and where the Titans are, they are in the awful category. They can move up into the very, or not good, what was it, awful, not a really bad category. I'm sorry, I forget. It's just there's not a lot of awfuls in the AFC. Really bad category by simply beginning the rebuild. They're going to lose Henry and Hopkins. Let them walk. It's time to get younger, and it's time to get new. This team needs a new direction, and it's time for a change. Their team needs right now are running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. This team is very far away from contention. I'll say that right now. On to the AFC West with the Denver Broncos. The Broncos started this past season 1-5. However, they got better throughout the season under Sean Payton, and they came back later in the year, had a nice win streak to get to an 8-9 final record, staying in the playoff race till Christmas Eve. A Christmas Eve loss against the Patriots. The Broncos proved that they can be something special in the coming years, especially with the state of the division being how it is. The Broncos are currently in the not good category. They can move up to the average category by beginning to retool the roster to get players that play Sean Payton's style. Their current team needs are quarterback, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, and cornerback. I feel like that, and you could possibly add safety in there. I feel like the running back situation's solid, and same with wide receivers, for sure. Next up, this one's going to be a real easy one. The Kansas City Chiefs, not much to say. They just won their second consecutive Super Bowl, beating the San Francisco 49ers 25-22. The Chiefs are currently in the amazing category. They're my first team I'm going to put in that category. And they can't move up, so my offseason plan for them is to do nothing, literally. You just won 2 Super Bowls, so why would you change anything? So do nothing. Possibly add a wide receiver, but really that's about it. Their team needs are a backup running back, a wide receiver, get younger on the offensive line, the defensive line, and add a linebacker. Re-sign Chris Jones and Ladarius Sneed too. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just keep it the same. Run it back. Free P coming. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders fired head coach Josh McDaniels and general manager Dave Ziegler through the middle of the season in November. It's now up to general manager Tom Telesco and head coach Antonio Pierce to rebuild a Raiders roster desperately in need of a rebuild. The Raiders right now are in the not very good category, which is like the second to lowest. I think it's awful, exceptionally bad, not very good, not good, and then average. They right now are in the not very good category. They can move up to the not good category by beginning the rebuild. Tom Telesco said it today, but he's wrong, I believe. They need to trade Devontae Adams. They need to begin the rebuild, which they're refusing to do, and that's not good. They need to trade Devontae to a contender. They need to let Josh Jacobs walk. It's time to start over and start fresh. However, they're not doing that, unfortunately. The current team needs for the Raiders are as follows. They need a quarterback, a running back, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. For the Los Angeles Chargers, that's our next team. The Chargers had a horrible year, going 5-12 despite the high expectations. This led to Telesco being fired in LA. Same with head coach Brandon Staley. They have a new GM in Joe Hortitz coming over from Baltimore and hired Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh, former Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh, to become the next head coach. These are amazing hires, and they're going to work out really well for the Chargers. The Chargers right now are in the not very good category. However, they can move up to the not good category by upgrading at receiver and improving that defense because it's ugly. This roster is desperately in need of a rebuild, considering the AFC West and Denver and Kansas City situations. Their team needs are as follows. Running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. So now we head on to the NFC. We're going to start off with the NFC East and the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys had an amazing regular season, winning the NFC East. However, they continued their playoff shenanigans, losing to the Green Bay Packers, the 7th seed at home. They were the first 2 seed to lose to a 7th seed at home. Embarrassing. The Dallas Cowboys need a lot of changes. Their team right now is in the very good category. They can move up to the exceptionally good category by being better in the playoffs. Which to do that, you need some additions, though. Their current team needs are as follows. Running back, wide receiver, offensive line, and safety. That can get them to the playoffs sooner rather than later. And hopefully Mike Zimmer works out for them. I like him, and I hope he works out. Now on to the New York Giants. This team needs help. They struggled this year. They were 6-11, I believe. 6-11. They really had a bad year, considering they made the playoffs just a year ago. This team right now is in the exceptionally bad category. However, they can move up to the not very good category by getting Daniel Jones help on offense and seeing what you can do on defense. Because that defense right now is atrocious, to say the least. The current team needs for the Giants are as follows: running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. This roster is in need of a rebuild. Nobody will admit it, but it is. It's time to rebuild in New York, once and for all. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, who started this past season 10-1. However, a second half collapse led to them finishing 1-5 in their last 6 games and losing in the playoffs to Tampa Bay. This possibly haunts the organization for a long time. It can't. They fired both coordinators. They have better coordinators in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio now, and hopefully they could take the Eagles back to where they belong. The team right now, I believe, is in the very good category. They can move up to the exceptionally good category by improving that defense and beginning to rebuild the offensive line due to Jason Kelce and others leaving. Same like Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. They're all likely retiring at the end. You need to start to plan for a life without them in Philly. Their team needs are as follows: running back, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety, due to Hassan Reddick likely leaving. So yeah. Next up, we got the Washington Commanders. The Commanders were awful in Josh Harris's first year as owner of the team. They went 4-13. Their last win was November the 5th against New England, I think. However, all hope is not lost. Harris hired Adam Peters to become the next general manager and Dan Quinn to become the next head coach. They will now attempt to make things better in the DMV. You guessed it, the Commander's status right now is awful. They really are. However, they can move up to the exceptionally bad status by starting the rebuild. They need to start the rebuild. However, they should not draft a quarterback with their first pick. You need to pick an offensive lineman in this situation. Detroit and Arizona started their rebuilds by picking an offensive lineman with the first pick in their new regime. And if the Commanders want to be successful, they have to do the same thing, I believe. Their team needs are as follows: quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, safety. You got anywhere, Washington. Just don't go quarterback with that first pick. And I'll talk a lot more about Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, the whole 9 yards closer to the draft once I get all my evaluations done and stuff. So, yeah. Let's look now at the NFC North division. We're going to start off with Chicago. The Bears started the season very weak with an 0-4 record. The team got better throughout the year, winning games, improving, and giving division winner Detroit a run for their money on their home field and beating them in Chicago. It would be in the Bears' bet. The Bears currently are in the not good category. However, I believe they can move up to the average category by making what I believe is the right decision and keeping Justin Fields as the QB1. Caleb Williams, and I'll just throw a little spoiler, Caleb Williams will not be the answer if he gets drafted to Chicago. I'll tell you that right now. If he's a Bear, it's not going to work out well for the Bears. I'm just saying. You need to keep Fields as your quarterback 1 and build around him. Got to improve some parts of the defense, and this is easily a competitive team. For the Bears, your current team needs are as follows: running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, cornerback, and safety. Maybe not so much cornerback if you re-sign Jalen Johnson, which I think they will do, but it won't be a need if you re-sign him. But other than that, I think everything else is a need. Detroit. The Detroit Lions won their first NFC North in 32 years, title in 32 years. They won their first playoff game in like 32 years. They didn't win just one playoff game, they won two. They should have been in the Super Bowl if they would not have blown a lead against the San Francisco 49ers. This team is really close. It is, and we all know it is. Currently, the Lions are in the amazing category. However, they could get better and make the one extra step needed to go to the Super Bowl by improving the defense. That's literally it. Their team needs offensive line, corner, and safety. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers. In what was supposed to be a rebuilding year for the Packers, they came on strong, having a strong second half, making the playoffs at 9-8, wreaking havoc in Dallas and defeating the Cowboys, and giving the 49ers a run for their money in San Francisco, and almost made it to the NFC Championship with a very young roster. This Packers team is probably the most upside in the league. At the very least, they're one of the teams with the most upside in the league. The Packers right now are in the exceptionally good category. They can move up to the amazing category and become a Super Bowl contender by adding another offensive target and improving the defense, which they kind of did by hiring Jeff Hafley to become their next defensive coordinator. Their current team needs are as follows: running back, defensive line, linebacker, and safety. Minnesota Vikings are up next. The Vikings are in a better situation than most people think. Yes, they may have been lucky with some of those games in 2022. However, they're not bad. They have talent. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. The Vikings right now are in the average category. However, they can move up to the good category by getting their quarterback situation squared away, then improving the secondary. However, if Kirk Cousins leaves, I think you need to trade Justin Jefferson and start a rebuild. Because I think it's necessary, possibly, for the Minnesota Vikings to contend for Super Bowls in the future if Kirk leaves. Their current team needs are as follows: quarterback, running back, offensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. We're going to go down now to the NFC South, starting with the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons had their third consecutive 7-10 season, leading to the firing of head coach Arthur Smith. The team made the decision to hire their old interim head coach from 2020, Raheem Morris, to become the next head coach. Raheem enters a situation where he can easily win the NFC South if he only adds a couple more pieces. This team is not a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. However, they are possibly a quarterback away from winning the division. Currently, the Atlanta Falcons sit in the not very good category. They can move up to the not good category by just simply improving on offense and beginning the process of developing a solid defense. The current team needs for the Falcons are as follows: quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, and cornerback. For the Carolina Panthers, this was a disaster of a season for the Panthers. And to make matters most, they don't even have a first-round pick. That's going to the Bears. The team finished 2-15, leading owner David Tepper to clean house entirely, firing general manager Scott Fitterer and head coach Frank Reich. Keep in mind that Tepper fired Reich in the middle of the season. The Panthers must begin a rebuild now under general manager Dan Morgan and head coach Dave Canales. I will make a Mondays with Mason video in the coming weeks about this, but this team is in the same situation San Francisco was preceding 2017, I believe. San Francisco got their hires right. I feel like the Panthers did the same, And in a matter of time, they could be a Super Bowl contender if they get things right from here. The Panthers right now are currently in the awful category. However, they can move up to the exceptionally bad category by just doing a couple things. Spending very little in free agency, drafting very, very well, and picking the best player available the entire draft. They need to do exactly what San Francisco did the season preceding 2017. If they do that, they may easily be well on their way to Super Bowl contenders, just like San Francisco was in 3 years, just like the Bengals were in 3 years. It's possible, Carolina. Just give it time. Their current team needs are as follows: wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. Interesting. New Orleans. This team is closer to contention than most people think. I think. The team was 9-8 this year and barely missed the playoffs. However, this is a proven year for head coach Dennis Allen. He has now hired 49ers young offensive guru Clint Kubiak to become the next offensive coordinator in the Big Easy. Currently, the Saints are in the average category. However, they can move up to the good category by finding offensive players that will work well in a Clint Kubiak system that includes Derek Carr starting as the quarterback, which I think this is his proven year in New Orleans, to be honest. The defense is very solid. Also, they need to escape their salary cap issues because every year they're like so much over the cap when the season begins. So, yeah. Or this time of year. So, yeah. Their current team needs are as follows: wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, cornerback, and safety. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Bucs pulled off a division win, finishing better than they did in 2022, and that was with Tom Brady as quarterback. The team upgraded with Baker Mayfield, largely in part because of the system that Dave Canales ran and will now be bringing to the division rival Carolina Panthers. That's why I think they're going to be really good in a couple of years. Trust me on that one. Right now, the Buccaneers are in the good category. However, they can move up to the very good category by keeping the current team together. It's working well, and it's continuing to get better. So keep it together. Right now, their current needs are quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, linebacker, and cornerback. The only reason quarterback goes on there is because Baker's a free agent. That's why it's on there. The minute Baker resigns, that will be highlighted and go away. Now to the NFC West Division with the Arizona Cardinals. In the first year of general manager Monty Ossenford and head coach Jonathan Gannon, the Cardinals finished with a 4-13 record, better than some people expected them to finish. However, there's still a lot of work to go for the Cardinals as they enter year 2 of their rebuild. Right now, the Cardinals remain in the awful status, despite defeating Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and showing promise, and Dallas too, and showing promise for the rebuild. However, they can move out of the awful status and into the exceptionally bad status by just continuing to build. This team is probably 1 to 2 more years away from being a true contender. However, it's very, very important that they begin to plan for contention now, because contention will become sooner than they realize, I believe. It's possibly in 2025 or 2026. That's coming soon. They need to start preparing for that day now. Just like 2 years ago, Detroit was preparing for their moment. It's time for the Cardinals to begin to do the same in the desert. Their current team needs are as follows: wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, quarterback, and safety. I actually think this team's ahead of the Lions when it comes to their rebuild, so they have a higher ceiling, and I'm excited to see what the Cardinals can do. I really am. For the Los Angeles Rams, everybody expected the Rams to be awful this year. I did not expect them to be as awful as some people did. I predicted 8-9, barely missing the playoffs and staying in until the end. The Rams this year went 10-7. They made the playoffs as the 6th seed and almost advanced to the AFC divisional round. The Rams right now are in the exceptionally good status. And here's why. This team won a Super Bowl 2 years ago, did lose many key pieces, got younger, and now I think they're on the cusp of being back there again. partly because of how amazing Sean McVay is as a head coach. They can get to the amazing status very, very soon. All they have to do is improve the defense. The offense is very good. Now it's time to improve the defense to make them Super Bowl contenders once again. Their current team needs are as follows. They could probably add another running back, maybe a better tight end. Higbee's good, but I think they could do better. Offensive line, defensive line, a linebacker, cornerback, and safety. Once that defense gets fixed, they're going to be scary. Next up, we have the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers were amazing this year, and I feel like they deserve to win the Super Bowl. However, the Chiefs played the better game and were better coached, thus they won the Super Bowl this past year. The 49ers can get there sooner rather than later. They are in the amazing status because they are a contender. However, they can take the one extra step they need to hoist the Lombardi Trophy next year in New Orleans by making minor improvements, sprucing things up a little bit. Do that and you're all good. The current team needs for the 49ers are as follows. Quarterback. Both of Brock Purdy's backups are bound to become free agents this year, so either re-sign them or draft somebody to sit behind Purdy. Wide receiver. They have some free agents and wideouts as well. Defensive line. They need to get a better defensive line in place to limit offenses like the Chiefs. They need that in order to win the Super Bowl, I believe. Cornerback and probably not safety. I had safety originally on here, but cornerback, I think, is more likely. They definitely need another cornerback. Other than that, this team's very close. And the Super Bowl this year proved just that. Last but certainly not least, we got the Seattle Seahawks. The team finished 9-8 this season, despite high expectations, missing the playoffs in the second year under Geno Smith. Personally, I felt like losing Canales really hurt Geno a lot, so it'll be interesting to see how he bounced back. The team responded to this by moving former head coach Pete Carroll from the sidelines to an advisory role, and they've hired Mike McDonald to become their next head coach. I really like the guy, and I hope he succeeds. The Seahawks right now are in the good status. They can move up to the very good status by establishing a new culture under McDonald and finding players who fit that new culture. Their current team needs are as follows. Tight end, defensive line, linebacker, and safety. If they just simply added those positions, this team is possibly back to contending with San Francisco. San Francisco, you guys are the best team in the NFC West by far. However, there's things to like about all three of these teams. Arizona, they're coming strong. Their rebuild might be over in a year or two. The Rams, it's supposed to be a down year. They had a good year. Possibly that offense is getting younger. If they have a defense, they can become a Super Bowl contender. And Seattle, they're establishing something special, I believe. So every team has something going for them. If you go back and watch my NFC Conference Championships recap, I put out a whiteboard and listed something positive for every single franchise. Please go back and watch that video because I think it's crucial to discuss. And I think that it's important, for sure. So yeah, please comment below what you think your team should do in the offseason to get better and possibly come close to competing with the Chiefs to win a Super Bowl. Right now, it feels inevitable that the Chiefs are going to win their third consecutive Super Bowl, the way things are trending. However, it's not impossible for any of the other teams to stop them. 31 teams have one task this offseason. Dethrone the back-to-back champs. Which team could do that? Time will tell. But if just one of those teams other than the Chiefs, if just one of those teams follows their offseason plan that I just provided them, they could possibly do it. Will the teams follow what I'm saying to do? Time will tell. That's the show. One other thing to say, too, I'm sorry I didn't bring this up on my Mondays with Mason yesterday. Last night I did, at the end of my show, discuss the unfortunate and tragic murder of Laken Riley, a student at the University of Athens near Georgia. She was unfortunately murdered while she was on a run on Thursday, February 22nd. I discussed that at the end of my video yesterday, how we need to start respecting and loving each other once again. My thoughts and prayers are with the Riley family as they endeavor this tough time. However, something I forgot to talk about, and I'll talk about it a little more tonight since it's more football related, and I'm sorry I didn't talk about this last night, is the mass shooting that occurred at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade on February 14th, Valentine's Day, next Wednesday. The Chiefs had their Super Bowl parade. And hang on, I just want to look up something. Super Bowl parade. And unfortunately, gunfire broke out at the parade. And it resulted in the murder of Lisa Lopez Galvin. She was a DJ for a radio station in Kansas City. She lost her life as a result of this mass shooting. I hate to talk about stuff like this on this show. I like to keep this show strictly about sports, and I literally hate to talk about violence and these terrible acts on this. However, we must do more than remember these victims. We need to get the point across, and I want to be part of the change, and I want you guys to be part of the change too. We need to get the point across that enough is enough with this senseless violence. In a span of less than 10 days in the United States of America, we had a mass shooting at a Super Bowl parade where people are supposed to be celebrating each other, and celebrating instead turns into a crime scene and a mass shooting. Unfortunate. And if that wasn't enough, just 8 short days later, a girl by the name of Laken Riley decides to go for a run on a local trail and is brutally murdered. Society, we can do better than this. When we put our hate and division aside and choose kindness and love and bringing each other up instead of tearing each other down, and respecting life, the human life that God gave us, and turn back to God, we can prevent senseless acts like this from happening. Lisa Lopez Galvin and Laken Riley should both be with us here today on Earth, but unfortunately they are not because of senseless violence. It must stop, and we must begin the process of respecting human life again. And there's a lot of things we could do to change that. However, I am not going to say them on this show because I don't want my channel to turn into a hotbed where people are debating stuff. This is not a politics show. This is a sports YouTube channel. However, it just upsets me the fact that we have violence at parades celebrating Super Bowl teams, and a girl that decides to go out for a run gets murdered. Is this the America that we want to be? Bigger than any of the questions that NFL teams have to answer this offseason when it comes to improving their rosters. There is one bigger question that everybody, whether you're a football fan or not, need to answer. We live in an America where a Super Bowl parade turns into a crime scene, and a DJ that's beloved in the community loses her life. We live in an America where a nursing student goes out on a jog, decided to go out on a jog, and was murdered while jogging. we need to ask ourselves, is this the America that we want to be? And I hope that every one of you answers no and tries to be a part of the solution. God blessed us with a life. God blessed everybody here on this earth with a life. And it's time we respect the lives of others and the lives of ourselves. It's time to be positive. No more putting people down. Let's instead build people up. The sooner we do that, the better off we will be. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this off-season plan today. Thank you very much for the time, for allowing me to rant and just get my point across to you guys, and I hope that was meaningful. I hope you guys have a good night. Take care. Stay safe. Continue to pray for Lisa and Lincoln and their families. And as I always conclude my show, and I feel like it's even more important tonight than normal to conclude my show with this, as always, peace. Please try to promote peace, and I'll see you guys for the next episode. Take care.